Camp Nelson F is back, finally. Back in 2018, Wild Turkey put out some Russell's Reserve single barrels with a warehouse location that said CNF, which stood for Camp Nelson F. And those barrels were some of the most unique, delicious, and funky single barrels from Wild Turkey ever. Now, once word got around, Wild Turkey fans, including me, gobbled them all up. That's right, I said gobbled them all up, pun intended. Since then, we have seen a bunch of other Russell's picks from different warehouses, mainly the Tyrone campus, but no Camp Nelson Fs since 2018. Well, until today, it's back in single Rickhouse form. Stay tuned, it's the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C from the Mash and Drum, and welcome back to the show. Like, subscribe, and help grow the channel for 2023. The single Rickhouse collection from Wild Turkey debuted just last year with the release of Camp Nelson C and its intention to highlight terroir by experimenting with various barrel locations. Now, each whiskey in the series is composed of whiskey from a single Rickhouse on Wild Turkey's Camp Nelson campus. So between last year and this year, each whiskey in the series is composed of bourbons from a single Rickhouse on Wild Turkey's Camp Nelson campus. Now, Camp Nelson Rickhouse F was constructed in the 1940s and is situated lower on the Camp Nelson grounds than its counterparts, overlooking the Kentucky River. Now, according to Wild Turkey, the airflow and wind currents from the river allow the barrels in Camp Nelson Rickhouse F to breathe more than whiskey stocks in the other Rickhouses. Now, last year, if you remember my review, I enjoyed Camp Nelson C, but didn't think it was worth the $250 price tag. So when I heard about Camp Nelson F being utilized for the next single Rickhouse release, I got pretty pumped. So it's here. Here are the details. The barrels in this bourbon were aged on the 4th and 5th floors of the 7-story Rickhouse. It's bottled at barrel proof at 117.6. Now, it's non-age stated, but supposedly contains bourbons about 10 to 15 years old. It's non-chill filtered, and it's available for a limited time at a suggested retail price of $300 per 750 milliliter bottle via select US retailers and the Wild Turkey Distillery. Yeah, that's right, 300 bucks. Last year, the Camp Nelson C was $250. This year, it's 300. I don't know if there's older whiskey in this, or I'm telling you, I think Campari just knows what it has now in Wild Turkey. They figured it out. People love Wild Turkey, and they're going to be putting out probably a lot more premium products as we go along here. It's crazy, but let's try it. Oh, man. I hate that this smells so good because it smells amazing. This is, if any of you have ever been lucky enough to walk into a Wild Turkey Rickhouse and just get that smell, that Rickhouse smell, the barrel funk, the angel share, everything that your senses pick up in that Rickhouse, that's what's in this glass. I think those are the bourbons that are super special. So far, that one is that's happening here. A lot of sweet oak. You get like that grape / cherry note that you get from the Camp Nelson F. So I had a bunch of Camp Nelson F picks, from back, in 2018 when they were releasing, and they're all gone except one. So this is the second bottle I have from Camp Nelson F. Man, this is all like cherry cola syrup. That Wild Turkey, like rich orange peel is still there, but it comes off more concentrated. It's not like a bright citrus, it's more of a deep, dark, concentrated citrus note. A lot of spice too. I mean, generally with Camp Nelson F, I remember getting a ton of cinnamon, sometimes a little bit of clove. You got that spice, you got that oak. It's all in here. The nose is just incredible. So, all right, let's try on the palate, guys. Cheers. I'm sorry to say, guys, this is stupid. You know what? This is terrible. It's awful. Don't buy it. It's terrible. Honestly, this is a ridiculously good bourbon. And I'll tell you why. When you take the first sip of this, the second it hits your tongue, the second it hits your palate, the flavors just explode. I mean, you can taste it immediately. Sometimes you take a sip of a bourbon, you kind of wait to see what happens. Is it gonna cause that little tingliness that you get from some spice, maybe some rye spice? Is it gonna give you some flavor right away? Sometimes you gotta wait for it. It takes you a couple sips, not with this one. This one is immediate. As soon as it hits your palate, this thing explodes. That like cherry cola note that I was getting on the nose, it almost comes through on the palate now. It's like cherry Coke. It's got like this cherry Coke note that's kind of wrapped together with just like dark molasses and like a richer like burnt caramel type of note. It is super confectionery. There's a lot of sweetness here. This thing's crazy. Second sip, I think you still have those dark flavors, but some of the little bit more nuance of this bourbon comes through, where you start picking up a little more of that citrus, kind of like that super dark orange. I think there's kind of some candy apple in there, kind of mixed together. Yeah, and on the back end, it's just spice, and I think I get more clove than cinnamon. You know, cinnamon is usually a note I get with Wild Turkey, but this is coming through a little bit more of like a clove spice. Maybe the cola has now gone like Dr. Peppery a little bit. This thing's crazy. It is, yeah. All right, let's talk about the finish here. It's still staying as soon as it hits your palate. This is also very consistent. You know, as you take a couple sips of bourbon and the flavors start to kind of level out, maybe take a deep dive and dip off a little bit, this one is just staying so true to each and every sip. It's crazy good. Now, the finish on this, I think, is what makes it a Camp Nelson F. You got, you know, your typical vanillas and caramels here, but everything is obviously concentrated. But the spice on this, the finish on this, just goes on for days. I think you get a little bit of like a sweet tobacco, Rickhouse-y, like funk on the back end. More of like that rich orange, like that deep dark, like almost caramelized orange peel type thing you get in the back end of this as well. Yeah, every time you take a sip, it just, you find more stuff, but the powerful like flavor punch of it, it still remains the same. You just kind of get different nuances in between. I love this so much. And listen, I've been hard on Wild Turkey the last couple years. They have put out a lot of stuff that I haven't been super impressed with. And I'm talking about limited releases here, guys. But when you talk about the last few Master's Keeps, one, you talk about Unforgotten, you talk about this year's Voyage. While they were all somewhat good in their own way, all three of them do not hold a candle to this. And I think this is way better than last year's Camp Nelson C. You know, actually, let's do a quick comparison. All right, here's the Camp Nelson C from Russell's Reserve. This was the first release from last year. Let's dive in. Real quick here before I forget, proof on this one, 112.4. And if you guys didn't know yet, Camp Nelson C, the warehouse where this was pulled from, has been decommissioned. They just couldn't save it. There's a lot of structural damage. The nose isn't even close. The nose isn't even close. The Camp Nelson F single Rickhouse destroys the C on the nose. The Camp Nelson C has a lot of sweet, but the Camp Nelson F has sweet on top of sweet on top of sweet. All right, sip of the Camp Nelson C. Yeah, I remain in what I said last year. The Camp Nelson C, although it's very good, I still feel like you could find Russell's picks. I've had Russell's picks that are better than that, like recently. Like Warehouse K recently. Those picks have been absolute hitters. Warehouse S last year had some really good barrels. I think that could get close to this, if not exceed it. But this thing, Camp Nelson F, single Rickhouse, other than Russell's 13, this is the best product that Turkey has put out in the last couple years, and it's not even close. All right, I could just kind of wax poetic about this and go on, but let's do a quick final breakdown. Here we go. All right, final breakdown on the 2023 Russell's Reserve single Rickhouse, highlighting Camp Nelson F. Price for this one, $300, which is pretty damn steep. But when you think about it, Master's Keep was $275 this year. So, I mean, the prices on these special releases for Wild Turkey, from Wild Turkey, just keep going up. Secondary market value on these, I've already started seeing these between $500 and $600. You know, like I said, these are getting, the word is getting around on these, and I think people are trying to capitalize on it. Availability on this is obviously going to be very limited, probably super limited. Only a handful of states I think are getting this, but Kentucky is getting them, and also eventually it should be, as in the press release said, it'll be released at the Wild Turkey gift shop. Value for this one, it's tough. I know most of you will probably say that it's a low value, and It is on the face of it for sure, especially when you compare it to a 13-year age-stated Elijah Craig barrel proof this year for only, you know, 65, 70 bucks. So in that context, yeah, it's a really delicious bourbon, but the value's low. The most I'd pay here, $300 I think is high enough for a bottle like this. I mean, it's an exceptional bourbon, but yeah, $300 I think is high enough for this bourbon. Alternatives for this one are pretty specific. The Elijah Craig barrel proof from this year, the C923, I think could go head to head with this. There's just not many bourbons I've tried this year that have like that Rickhouse-y, just rich, dense, decadent type of flavor profile to it. And the only other alternative to this is if you have any Camp Nelson F picks from back in the day. Because I haven't, like I said, I haven't had a turkey product like this in a very long time. And recommendation, am I gonna go through it? This is a buy immediately. Look, I know it's expensive, but Master's Keep was $275. Now, if you skipped Master's Keep because of the price or because you're just not that much into rum, that's fine. I did not buy a Master's Keep this year. I didn't think it was worth $275. I'm glad I bought this instead because this, to me, as a Wild Turkey fan, is worth every penny. However, for most of you out there, $300 I'm sure is a lot of money, and it's really just whether or not how much of a turkey fan you are, if that's going to be worth it to you to get this bottle. All I can say is that no matter how much you pay to get this bottle, whether you get it for retail, if you have to overpay it for it, you're not going to be disappointed. That's the most honest answer I can give you. All right, guys, well, thanks for watching this review for the new Russell's Reserve Single Rickhouse Camp Nelson F release for 2023. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit the like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram. Let me know what you think of this one. Are you willing to pony up the $300 for this bottle like I was? Again, if you're a turkey fan, you're going to flip out if you're able to get this bottle. But yeah, this is going to be one of those really special bottles this year. We'll see how it holds up in a blind. This is a hell of a way to put Single Rickhouse back on the map for me. So with that said, like I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. Cheers, I'll see you next time right here on The Mash and Drum. Damn, this is good.